Hello and welcome everyone. So I'll be explaining recent Codeforces round 746, problem number A, gamer Hemose. Okay, in this problem, basically what's given is like a soldier or an agent has n weapons, and the ith weapon will have a damage of AI. So you will have n weapons consisting of some values. You could consider it as an array of n integers. Each of the items will have a separate value called AI, and the agent will have to face the enemy, and the enemy's health will be capital H. The task is very simple. What you have to do is you have to defeat the enemy, or which means that you have to decrease the health less than or equal to 0 of the enemy, which means capital H should be less than or equal to 0. How will you do that? You will use your weapon, and in one move what you can do is you could use your weapon, and you could deal damage to the particular villain or the enemy, and by doing that you will decrease the health of capital H by AI meaning the ith. If you use the ith weapon, then it will decrease that much of strength from the capital H, or like the enemy's health. Now the question is, what you have to do is you have to find that's the task that you will do in each and every move. So in one move you could do that. You could decrease the enemy's health by its damage value, any of the weapons that you choose, and finally what you have to do is you have to find the minimum number of times that you will trigger the weapon such that finally you kill the enemy completely, which means the value of capital H would be less than or equal to 0. Now the most important statement in this whole problem is this: the agent or the soldier who is gonna shoot, it's not allowed for him to choose the same weapon for 2 times in a row. What this means is that, let's say A1, A2, and A3, I've got 3 weapons, and if I use in the move number 1, if I use this weapon which deals A3 damage, then in the immediate next move I cannot use A3. I have to use either A2 or A1. So I hope you're getting what the statement is actually referring to. Now how are we going to solve it? Now you might think that, okay, yes, of course we're going to solve this problem using greedy approach. Of course it is. We have to minimize the number of times. So the more the strength of the weapon itself would be, the minimum number of times that it will take for the agent in order to kill the enemy completely. The easiest way to do is to sort the array, of course, because each and every weapon will have some kind of strength. Each and every weapon will have its damage value, AI. So if I sort the array, then I will know that the last 2 weapons that's gonna be left are will deal the maximum amount of damage, and thus it will result eventually the minimum number of times that the agent will need, right? So if the array is like 217, let's say the array is 217, I've got 3 weapons. Weapon number 1 is like deals 2 damage, and weapon number 2 deals 1 damage and 7. I will just sort the array 1, 2, 7. What is the last 2 remaining weapon? I will only use these 2. Now I would have used the last weapon if they didn't like show this statement, which is that you cannot choose the same weapon for 2 times in a row. So if this statement wouldn't be here, then I would have always chosen the last weapon. Okay, I mean the weapon that consists that deals the maximum amount of damage. But in this case, it's not. I cannot use one weapon. Weapon consequently, one by one, immediately after one move. So I have to use it. Like I cannot choose the same weapon for 2 times in a row. So what I have to do is, that's exactly what I've taken the maximum. The maximum the 2 weapons that deals the maximum amount of damages by sorting the array. That's it. Now the question is, yes, I've dealt that. Now the question is, what is the constraint of the health of the enemy? The health. Now, interesting part is that enemy's health is like up to 10 to the power 9. Now the question is, if we try to do that each time, I'm gonna take one value and then subtract it from, let's say the number given is 10 to the power 9, and the maximum 2 weapons value is like 2 and 7. Now what will I do? Will I subtract each time 7 and then check whether it's less than or equal to 0 or not? If I do this way, if I do this linear brute force way, then it's not gonna fulfill the time limit. It's gonna give TLE for sure. That's exactly we need to use a better approach. Think about it. As we are always gonna be using these 2 weapons, then I know I will use the nth weapon, which is the last weapon, consisting of greater, or like the greatest, deals the greatest damage, and the second most greatest damage is like the n-1th. So my first move will always be nth weapon, for nth weapon, and the second move will be n-1, and then the third move will be nth weapon, and then n-1th, and then nth weapon, and so on and so forth. It's gonna go like that. Now this does give us a hint on how to solve the problem using binary search. Now before I get to the binary search, first I will explain the transition function that we're gonna do in the binary search. Now what will the transition function be? The transition function is that as we have to like minimize the number of times the agent will use, or like minimize the number of moves. Now let's say I've taken k moves. I've taken k moves, and now I'm gonna try to explain the transition function, whether or not a particular value, which means the a nth and the a of n-1th, these 2 weapons are fulfilling or destroying the enemy, and how many moves that I need. So as the value that depending on the value that I'm gonna binary search, it's gonna be the number of moves. So the thing that I'm gonna have to minimize is I'm gonna binary search depending on that particular value, which is the number of moves. So I'm gonna binary search on the minimum, on the number of moves. I will try to find out whether I can fulfill the task or destroy the enemy with k number of moves. If it's not, then I'm going to shift to the rightwards or to the leftwards, depending on the transition function. Now what the transition function is going to do is going to take the 2 values and just check whether it's going to completely destroy the enemy or not. What is the transition function? It's going to be simply like that. H is the enemy's health, so I'm gonna say, okay, if it is the enemy's health, then okay, what did I actually do? actually, let me show you in the code part. It's going to be much more easier to understand. Yeah. Okay. So in the transition function, what actually is happening is that I'm assuming that I'm gonna make k moves. That's exactly what I'm gonna assume. I'm gonna assume that I'm gonna make k moves, and using these k moves, whether I can beat the enemy or not. So if this k is even number, then I know that I'm gonna use even number of, let's say that k is equal to 4. If k is equal to 4, I know that I will use even number of the last weapon and the even number of the second most viable weapon. So like for the case, if k is odd, then let's say k is equal to 4. Oh, let's say k is equal to 6. Then I'm going to use 3 times the a of nth weapon and 3 times a of n minus 1th weapon. If k is equal to odd, then let's say odd meaning one value 5, which is an odd number, then I know that I will use 3 times a of nth weapon and a of n minus 1th weapon 2 times. Okay, so depending on that and transitioning depending on the number of moves that I'm gonna make, I will say that then let's say for case k equal to 5, I'm gonna make 5 moves, then 3 times a of n plus 2 times a of n minus 1, whether this value is greater than or equal to the enemy's health. If it's the case, then yes, I have successfully beaten the enemy, which means that k move is sufficient. Now I will try to find out whether I could do the same task in the minimum number of moves, and I will do that in binary search way. If I would have completed using k moves, then I will say, okay, let's try to use some less number of moves, and let's try to make whether I can beat the enemy even lesser than k moves, and that part will be using a logarithmic way, which is definitely binary search. Now let's take you to the code part and let's see how far we reached here. Okay. This is the transition function that I've just explained earlier, and for each and every test case, we're taking n, and this is the health of the enemy, taking the array, and this is the last 2 value. Okay, after sorting the array, of course, you know what these values are. I've already explained, and this is the binary search. The binary search will be in the range from L equal to 0 till h plus 1. This is for the boundary portion. Like the maximum could be h and the minimum could be 1. A minimum, it could take 1 number of moves, or maximum, it could take the health of the enemy itself. That's why just for the safety purpose, the boundaries are here, and inside the transition function, this is the solve function is the transition function. If it is applicable, this is meaning that r equal to meet, meaning that yes, I have beaten the enemy. Now I will try my best in order by assigning r equal to or right equal to mid. I'm trying to say that, okay, let's see if we could find out minimum then this mid, minimum number of moves than this mid, or if this mid, and try to figure out whether we can find even minimum number of moves. And if it's not, if the solve transition function gives false value, then it does mean that I haven't even figured out the number of moves yet in order to beat the enemy. That's why L equal to meet. And finally, just printing the value R, which is definitely meaning the minimum number of times or the minimum number of moves that I need. So yeah, I hope I made you understand this problem, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed this video, give a like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, till next time, goodbye.